They're good for you. Try running that an ad like that today and see how far you get with that, right? So things come and they go, right? This is the way the whole thing works. But on the other hand, in Islam, freedom is clearly defined. It has limits, it has boundaries. But who sets those? Legislators? Representative Bonner? McCain? Newt Gingrich? Sarah Palin? Barack Obama? Hillary Clinton? Allah sets the boundaries. Allah, who is Allah? What is this Allah business you're giving me? What are you talking about, this Allah business? Allah? You know who Allah is? Allah is the creator of the universe. That's who Allah is, people. And He says this is permissible and that's not permissible. And He does that on the basis of what's good for you, clearly, and what's not good for you. This freedom in Islam is a distinct feature which is stability. Which means what? What is permissible 1400 years ago is permissible today. What is prohibited 1400 years ago is prohibited today. You know what's what. And we know what we can do and what we can't do. And we also know that there's also a lot of gray areas which you can do this or that, because they're gray areas. Flexibility, it's called. Because Allah built into it, of course He built flexibility into it. Furthermore, freedom in Islam is underpinned ultimately by justice and by authority because it comes from Allah. And contrary to that which is defined by this so-called democracy that they keep talking about, that's man-made. That's a bunch of guys with wigs up there in Philadelphia saying, "We the people." It reminds me of, I almost puked at the time when I heard, what's his name, Mubarak stand in front of the Egyptian assembly and said, "Bismi Shab," or was it was not him, it was his predecessor. Bismi Shab, Nasser, he said, "Bismi Shab," in the name of the people. What? In Egypt? You're going to tell me Bismi Shab? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. In democracy, as we have said, freedom is opposed to and it conflicts with whatever is defined as evil only by human legislators. All these people from Palin and Gingrich and Hillary and the rest of them, all of those people, they're the ones who says what's right and what's wrong. Would you trust them? I wouldn't trust Sarah Palin to tell me what's right or wrong, and I wouldn't trust Hillary. One is left, one is right. I wouldn't trust either one of them. Nor would I trust that woman who's dripping blood, Madeleine Albright, or Kissinger, or any of them. Would you trust them to tell you what's right and wrong? I wouldn't trust them a second. Freedom has to be defined by the one who created us. That's who defines it for us. Freedom and democracy in the end turns out to enslave people to whom? To one another. It's called the tyranny of the majority. The tyranny of the majority. That means if there's 51% of the people who says, "Finish Medicare, who cares about those old people? Let them die." It's finished. That's what it means. That's tyranny. But what kind of tyranny? That's called democracy. Because 51% of the people say that's tyranny of what? The majority. And that causes people to be under the control of other human beings who may be of lesser intelligence. I really think I know more than Sarah Palin, and I even think I know more than Hillary. I do. I certainly know more than Newt Gingrich, I'll tell you that. How? By Allah. That's good. Because I know that Allah exists, and I know that Allah speaks, and I know that Allah tells us all of these things. That's how, if you ask how. So in Islam, people, freedom frees us from enslavement to who? To other human beings. It frees us from enslavement to Hillary. It frees us from enslavement to Sarah. It frees us from Newt and Obama and all the rest of them. Why should we be slaves to them? Let's be slaves to Allah. It's a better deal all around. Much better deal all around. Allah is the creator. Allah provides for us. Allah facilitates the universe for us. Where do you think, how do you think we eat, folks? Who thought up this idea that you can eat green stuff and live? You know that stuff that grows outside? You can eat it, and it'll keep you alive. Who thought that up? Who thought up the idea, what do I breathe out? Carbon dioxide. Okay, what does that green stuff breathe in? Carbon dioxide. What does it breathe out? Oxygen. What do I breathe in? Oxygen. Who thought that up? Hillary? Newt? Rumsfeld? George? They didn't think that stuff up. So why should they tell us what's right and what's wrong? I'd rather say, the guy, whoever figured that out, I'm going to take it from them. I'm not going to take it from them. I want to take it from Allah. This is what he's saying. So this is the decision you have to come to. You have to really to understand in yourself, who is it? So you say that worshiping the Creator gives us, we are slaves, but it gives us honor, it gives us dignity, it teaches us right, it teaches us wrong, and it teaches us all of these things, and the difference lies in what, who one is enslaved to, Allah or to some human being. And why would we willingly consent to be slaves of other human beings when we could be the slave of Allah? Worshipping Allah represents the ultimate freedom because it frees us from being enslaved to other human beings and the false gods. In the spurious democracy, the so-called freedom places us under the various types of pressures and external strains that in the end cause us to lose a great portion of our true freedom, both of thought and choice. On the contrary, as self-declared slaves, and I say, my name is Abdullah, I am a slave of Allah, and I am free. I am free from their external pressures. I am free from their effects that limit and deprive me of freedom of choice and decision. I am free of the New World Order, which exposes us all to evil and to corruption and the other things which ruin our really, truly good morals, our natures of fitra, and on the other hand, what Allah gives us. Freedom and democracy appears as though through the voting process we give a fellow human being a gift, which is our vote, and in turn the recipient of that gift has the right to take as much as he wants, whenever it suits him. In Islam, it is the right that Allah has granted to His slaves, and no human being, He says, has the right to deprive others of it, except for a reason that is legislated or prescribed by Allah. So as Muslims, we need to keep in mind that behavior should always be in accordance with the divine ordained principles and moral values of the Creator of the universe. That is a truly divine civilization. So when we call for the downfall of all of these dhalims, this is what we're calling for. A world that is ruled by Allah and by people who are slaves of Allah and live their lives as slaves of Allah and don't be fooled by any kind of nonsense. So I go on and I talk a lot about this because, again, always the problem is time is flying away. And then I talk about different kinds of freedom that Allah gives to people and so on and so forth, how He gives us this, He lets you give the freedom of travel, freedom of education. Education is the lost property of the Muslim. All of these things, you know these things. If you want to read about this, really, the freedom of ownership, freedom of means of acquiring property, all of them with Quranic quotes, you can get the book. You can read all about freedom to work, freedom of education, all of these things. These are the freedoms of Allah. These are the freedoms that He's granted. Freedom, political freedom, all of these things. Chapter and verse, as they say. No matter what other people say, what Allah says about these things. What Allah has granted to the human beings. The beauty of the life that He's granted us. Imagine what kind of life it would be. We talked about that in one of our other talks about that. So I mentioned all of those things and that, but I want to before the time completely flies away and everything like that, to say that all of those things that they talk about and say that Muslims don't have this and they don't have that, that's rubbish. Allah has given us all of these things and more. You have to look, you have to see. There was this woman, Shireen Ibad. I'm not pronouncing her name right. She won the Nobel Prize for jurisprudence. And some woman, like a Barbara Walters type woman, is trying to trap her to say that Islam is a terrible, nasty thing. You know, it's pushing her in the corner, you know, well, they didn't come and meet you at the airport. They didn't, you know, if you were a man, they would have, you know, and if you were this and you were that, and, you know, isn't Islam terrible? And she said, you know, just to cut to the end of the story, she says, look, you know, let me tell you something. Islam is great. The woman goes, what? Yeah, Islam is great. Then she went on to say, Islam is perfect. Perfect? Nobody came to meet you at the airport. She said, you know, the problem is that the people who become Muslims are at varying levels. They have cultural problems, they have individual problems, they have all kinds of things. We all know that. Many of us in this room became Muslims. We all know that. You bring your baggage to it. People bring their baggage to it. They take what they can get from it. Sometimes they have things, like in India, still, women are paying men to get married instead of the other way around. That's true. It's true. We're supposed to pay women. We're supposed to give them mahar, right? Which gives them the freedom. If they don't like us after a while, say, well, too late for you, buddy. Give me my money, I'm taking my money, and I'll try my other chances. Right? Well, like that. Like that. I mean, you know, you want to cut through to it, that's what it is. And then, you know, you have $100,000 sitting in the bank, the guy's got to behave himself, you know? That's the truth, you know? But now, on the other hand, he's got $100,000 in the bank, you know, and she's got diddly, you know, and then where's she at? You know, so that's why Allah said, you pay her. That's Allah's law. Well, they changed it. Because the people in the past, that's what they used to do. You know, I mean, what it says in Allah, we found our forefathers doing it. This is what Shireen Abadi was talking about. This kind of thing. Islam itself, it's perfect. What Allah made is good. What we make of it is what we make of it. But what Allah made is good. You want freedom? Freedom of education, freedom of knowledge, freedom of political, freedom of this, freedom to travel, freedom of that. All of those things, Allah gave them to everybody. And you can go through the Quran, which I have done, and you can see this verse and this ayat, and this is what the Prophet said. And remember, who is he? Rahmatul Alameen, Mr. Rahmatul Alameen, the one who's here for mercy to all people. That's what it is, people. Mercy for everybody. Mercy for everybody. This is Allah's message. This is what Allah gives to the people. This is the freedom that He gives to the people. So I talk about that. But all of this, again, this is the outer form of freedom. These are all the outer forms of freedom. And all of this stuff is talking about the outer forms of freedom. Just to say, because I don't want them to say, you know, you people, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. Blah, blah, blah don't mean nothing. Here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. What do you have to say about it? What do you have? Put your cards on the table. We'll put our cards on the table. What would you rather have? This or that? I'll take this. I'm Abdullah. I'm Abdullah. I'm the slave, I hope and pray, of Allah. I'm not the slave of these things, of politicians or war people or any of those people. I want to be the slave of Allah. I want to do what Allah has done. Because He gives me everything, and they give me nothing but trouble. So, but all of that again is about the outer, the dhahir. Now in the khutbah, because our friend is talking today in Northern Virginia, Shaykh Muhammad al-Ninaway, may Allah bless him and be pleased with him, he tells the following story. He says, one of the pious scholars from over 1,000 years ago, as well as teaching young scholars to be, future scholars, he also taught kids. Well, we know that. And one day he told the kids, he said to the kids, hey kids, go and hide in a place where no one sees you. They all ran and they hid, except for one kid. And he came to the teacher, this is his words by the way, he came to the teacher and he said, you told us to hide where no one sees you, but Allah sees me, so I can't find any place to hide. His teacher looked at him. Because when you get a bunch of kids, I'm a teacher, I teach kids, every once in a while you get one kid.